Hi Ma, my name is Jaimika and this is my assignment 4. First, I would like to show the output before I explain the code. So this is my IMDB Movies API. For example, I want to search for movies with the title King. I will click the search. Then it should show me the list of all the movies with the title King. So for example, I click this, then it will show me the image of that movie together with the title and the description. And then if I like to search those movies that are in theater, I will click in theater. Then it will show me the list of those movies that are currently in theater. And then when I choose the first one, Super Mario, then it will show me the image, the title, the genre, and the ratings for that movie. And also I want to show the portrait. So it looks like this. And then search history. Like this. Okay, now to explain the code. So first one is the searches plus core data class. So this code imports two frameworks, foundation and core data. This provides functionality for declaring a class called searches. It inherits from the NSManage object, which is a core class in core data. And this code is part of a project that involves managing data in a database-like manner. Next is searches plus core data property. So this code extends the searches class declared in the previous code with some additional functionality. It defines a method called fetchRequest that returns a request for searching and fetching searches objects from a core data store. It also declares four properties: ID, search, date, and result, which are marked as NSManage and represent columns in the corresponding database. It conforms the searches class to the identifiable protocol, which provides a unique identifier for each object, allowing it to be easily identified and managed. Next is the view controller. Okay, so the search button, this code defines an action which triggers the button called search button. Yet inside this action, it checks whether the search field text field is empty or not. If it is empty, the function simply returns and does nothing else. Otherwise, it extracts the value entered in the search field and assigns it to the variable called search and passes an argument to a function called search API. So this code is responsible for initiating a search operation by calling an API when the search button is pressed, but only if a search term has been entered. Okay, next is this function called search API. So this code defines a function called search API. It takes a string argument called search, and inside this function, it constructs a URL to call the API and receive data related to the search term. It then calls a method from a network manager object to retrieve the data. And once the data is received, it is parsed into a custom object using JSON decoder, and the results are displayed in a table view. So this function also saves the search results to a local core data database. So this code is responsible for fetching search results from an API, processing and displaying them, and saving them for later use. Okay, next is function table view cell for row at. So this code defines a function. This is called every time a table view cell needs to be displayed on the screen. This function takes two arguments, the table view and the index path of the cell to be displayed. So inside this function, it dequeues a reusable cell with the identifier search cell from the table view and assigns it to a constant code cell. It then extracts the title property from the responses array at the given index and sets the text label of the cell to its value. It also sets the text alignment, background color, text color properties of the cell. So this function returns configured cell to displayed in the table view. So this code is responsible for populating each cell in a table view with appropriate data. Okay, next is this prepare for segue. So this code defines a function called prepare for segue that is called just before a segue is performed if the segue identifier And the segue identifier is detail segue. It retrieves a destination view controller, casts it to a custom view controller class, which is called the movie detail controller, and sets the movie property of the destination view controller to a movie object at the selected row of the table. If the segue identifier is anything else, it creates a new back button item with the title back and sets it as a navigation item button. So this code is responsible for preparing the destination view controller and the navigation item for a segue. Okay, next is the movie detail controller. Okay, so this code defines a function called viewDidLoad that is called after the view has been loaded in the memory. It sets background color of the view and so the text color and the title. And if there's a movie object, it assigns the title and description properties of the movie corresponding to labels. It also initiates a data task to download the image associated with the movie from a URL. It sets the download image to the movie image using the main thread, and overall this code is responsible for setting up the initial state of the view controller's view and displaying the movie details in appropriate UI elements. Next is the theater view controller. Okay, so this code defines a view controller that's called theater view controller that displays a list of movies currently in theaters. It conforms to the UI table view data source and UI table view delegate protocols to provide data in a table view. In this function, it calls an API to retrieve a list of in-theater movies and uses the data to populate the responses array. It then reloads the data in the theater table view. Okay, next is the function table cell for row out. So this code defines a function that populates a table view cell with data for each row. It gets the title of the movie for the current row for any array called responses and sets the text label of the cell for the title. It also sets some properties for the cell, such as the background and also the text color. So it returns the cell to be displayed in a table view. Okay, next is prepare for segue. So this code defines a function that gets triggered before a segue transition between the view and the controller takes place. So if the segue has an identifier theater detail segue, it sets a variable called movie in the destination view controller to the movie object in the responses array at the selected row in the theater table. Next is the search history view controller. Okay, so this code fetches data from a core data entity called searches and sorts them in descending order based on their date, and then assign the fetch data on the array called searches. Then in a function table view cell for row at, so this code is displaying the search history in a table view. So it is called whenever the table is loaded or reloaded. It sets up the table display details for each of the search. It retrieves search details including the search query and the date it was searched from the searches array and formats the date it formats the date, and it sets the text label and detailed text label of the search with the search details and the number of results found. Next is the theater detail controller. So this code defines a view controller named theater detail controller that displays the details of the movie. It has 4 outlets to display the movie image, rating, title, and genre. So the movie property is set with the selected movie from the previous screen. And in the viewDidLoad method, it sets the properties of the view with the movie details. It also load the movie's image from a URL and display it in a UI image using a data task. Now for the model. So this API reply is used to decode JSON data from an API response. It has properties such as search type, expression, error message, and results, all of which are string, array, and from another custom construct called search response. So the struct conforms the decodable protocol, which allows it to be automatically decoded from the JSON data. Okay. Next is the search response. So this code defines a struct search response that conforms to the decodable protocol, which means it can be used to decode JSON data into Swift objects. So the struct has 5 properties: result, type, ID, image, title, description, which corresponds to a piece of data in the JSON response. Okay, next is the in-theater. So this is used to decode JSON data from an API response. The first struct in-theater response has properties that represent information about the movie that is currently in theaters, while the second one has properties that represents the overall response from the API, which includes an error message of an array of in-theater response objects. Next is the app delegate. So here I added the code that creates a persistent container object for core data storage. So this container is initialized with the name movies API. It sets the properties of the view context to automatically merge changes from the parent context. It loads the persistent stores and handles any errors that might occur during the loading process. The container is returned for use throughout the app. Okay, next is the networking manager. So this code defines a class networking manager that has a single function, which is get API data, which takes in a URL string. And this function uses the URL session to create data tasks and retrieve data from the specified URL. So if there's an error, the function calls the closure with a result object that contains the error. Well, if the response code is not in range of 200 to 299, so it calls the closure with the result object that contains the error. Otherwise, it calls closure with the result object that contains the retrieved data. So this class defines a static variable shared, which is an instance of network manager class that can be accessed globally. And then finally, this movie API entity called searches. So this is the searches entity, and it just defines its attributes like the date, ID, result, and search that is used to get the movie details. That is all for my side. Thank you so much.